Okay. All right. Okay. Hello, everyone. That video is a hard act to follow, but it's very moving and set the stage nicely for this conversation. I'm Susan Call. I'm honored to be moderating this panel. I'm currently the events advisor here at the store, but I came on when Brad and Lissa bought the store in 2011, and I've been I left and came back, and you'll find many booksellers here do the same thing. It's a wonderful place to work and a hard place to lead, and I'm proud to be part of the community here. So we have a great panel here that each panelist is uniquely qualified to talk about bookstores today. I'm just going to do brief intros, but speaking of community and the PMP community, Wil Haygood is sort of synonymous with this bookstore, in addition to being the author of 10 books. Among them, the prize-winning biographies of Thurgood Marshall, Sammy Davis Jr., Sugar Ray Robinson, and Adam Clayton Powell, and his book, The Butler, which was made into a film. Wil is one of the most beloved customers. We love seeing him here. And we have Ruth Lehman here. She's a publishing veteran. She joined Penguin Random House in 1995 and is currently a vice president there of account marketing. And she's worn many different publishing hats, including in a literary agency, as an editor, and as an author. And I didn't know until I looked at your bio that you also worked in an independent bookstore, so we'll hear more about that. And then we have here Katie Waldman. She's a staff writer at The New Yorker, and she writes about books, culture, and more. And before that, she was a staff writer at Slate, and she won the National Book Critics Circle's citation for excellence in reviewing in 2019, and various other awards. And then, of course, you all know Brad. But you might not know that Brad is also the author of 2 books and a former Washington Post reporter and editor. So this is such a broad topic, it's kind of intimidating to think about how we're even going to scrape the surface of it. I think we could do an all-day panel or conference on this, but let's begin. I'm going to start with asking Wil.
Well, actually, Susan, can I just provide a little context?
Oh, yes, of course. Sorry, Brad's going to speak.
Like I said, we only do the 4th anniversary once. So I just thought it would be helpful to give a quick overview of 4 years of bookstore history. I won't be quick, but when PMP was established, in retrospect, that was kind of like the heyday, of bookstores in the United States. There were thousands and thousands, over 6,000. And so, Carl Cohen and Barbara Lee, they started from scratch, but there were a lot of other bookstores around, and it was good reason to think that there was a strong future ahead for independent bookstores. Well, things started getting rocky not long after that. Through the 90s and 2000s, there was a sharp reduction, pretty precipitous reduction in the number of independent bookstores around the country. The church was about 2/3, and that was because you had a number of things going on over that 20-year period or so. You had the rise of the chains of discount stores, and you had Amazon, you had the advent of e-books, and so, by the beginning of the 2010s, there were fewer than 2,000 independent bookstores in the country. Now, it's an even more incredible feat than to realize against that backdrop what Barbara and Carla did in the 27 years that they had Politics and Prose in building it up into this beloved enterprise here in D.C. When Lissa and I came along and stores were up for sale in 2010 and ultimately ownership changed in 2011, there were mentioned in the video, a lot of dire predictions about the future of bookstores. And had Lissa and I actually had any business experience and knew what we were doing, we probably would not have bought Politics and Prose. Unfortunately, we were naive enough to think, hey, why not? But it turns out that during the it was perfect timing, because during the 2010s there was this resurgence, may be a little too strong a word, but still a reversal in the fortunes of independent bookstores. And there began to be, for a number of reasons, a net increase in the total number of independent bookstores in the country. Terms were somewhat better from that we were getting from publishers, but most importantly, I think people began to realize all over the country what was at stake if they would continue to lose their neighborhood bookstores. So, even though it might sometimes be easier and cheaper to shop on Amazon, people have realized the value that they have in going into these independent bookstores like Politics and Prose. And so, we were fortunate, Lissa and I, in sort of riding this sort of turnaround through the 2010s. Now, the pandemic was something else. That was really dramatic, of course, for everybody, particularly hit at the core of independent bookstores. What are we about, if nothing else? Bringing people together. On the other hand, how do you fight a pandemic? Isolate. So it really worked against what we do in a very basic sense. But we got through it again, thanks largely to the support from the community, which went online and started buying from us and many other bookstores through web orders, and also the ingenuity of our staff here and staffs. A lot of people that were bookstores are able to pivot and adjust their businesses in various ways. Anyway, that brings us to today, and with the pandemic, having eased, business is back to a large extent, and as you can tell, just with everybody gathered here, and so we think that we're back on track. So that is a very brief background to set the stage. Back to you.
Okay, well that's a good segue to the question I was going to ask you, Wil. As an author, where it's the business is getting tougher and tougher, as we were talking about the other day, what would life be like for you as an author without independent bookstores, or without this bookstore?
Wow, I moved here to Washington in the 2003, and I had a book coming out, a book about Sammy Davis Jr, and it was amazing to be invited to a bookstore to give a reading for that book. My publisher happened to have been Knopf. You're still my publisher. And they published Langston Hughes, and Langston Hughes was a busboy at the Boardman Park Hotel just down the street, and so it was so sentimental to me to do that. Rick Atkinson on the film said that he would finish a book and come here and walk around. One of my standout experiences is a little different. I had a reading here for the Butler, and the book came out after the film came out, and there was somebody in the audience who I recognized because, now this was after the book came out, and the movie was #1 at the box office, and there was somebody in the audience who I recognized because they had turned me down for the high school prom. You know, so those moments. You know, I think that the bookstores have just become another part of who I am. This bookstore has just become another feature of my very soul. You know, so it's hard to imagine what it would be like. I mean, because it's so integral to my writing life, to know that there are people in this bookstore who, when I have a book that comes out, that they're going to take care of that book. You know, even if it's not flying off the bookshelves, they kind of make me think that it's flying off the bookshelf. You know, and that's enough to keep me going. So.
Thank you. I remember that event for the Butler. This place was like crazy busy. That was a great event. Katie, let's talk a little bit about the way our reading habits have changed, or what you see as a book critic, and you know whether independent bookstores play any role in influencing our reading habits.
Yeah, that's a great question. In part, something that I worry about just in the past few years is sort of the increasingly blurry line between art and entertainment and then distraction, right? Which is sort of eating both of the other two's lunch in some ways. And when I think about the difference of between going on Amazon and like putting a book in your shopping cart and then it just comes to you, versus going to a bookstore and wandering around and sort of looking at different blurbs and different covers and seeing like who the books are hanging out with. It's just, it's a more intimate, it's a more romantic, it's a more full and human experience. And I think that that actually encourages you to relate to the book itself in a different way. And especially because a book is such a sort of vessel of consciousness or sentience, it's very intimate to read a book. You spend a whole lot of time doing it, and you kind of want an introduction, you know? Like, you don't just want to put it in a cart and have it show up at your door. You want a bookseller or someone to sort of, you know, introduce you and show you, like, this is this book, and this is the author, and here are the people who publish it. And it's nice to have a little bit of community building around the acquisition of a book, I think.
And as a critic, you're probably seeing all these books, you know, months before they come out, but does browsing in a store ever sort of make you think about books in a different way, or think about things you might want to review that you hadn't seen before?
Yeah, there's a practical answer to that and a more sentimental one. And the practical answer is you absolutely want as much information as you can get about what booksellers who are, you know, it's a layer of expertise, the booksellers, the publishers. This is a point of contact between the critic and the publishing industry. And you want to know what books people are excited about, what books they're spotlighting. I get a little of that like during the galley process with advanced copies, but you know, the booksellers are also another sort of voice, and they're not, in some ways, they are as reliable, if not more reliable, because they're not trying to foster a connection between you and a particular title. They're trying to foster a connection between you and a title. They're trying to get you to go home with a book. And so I find the input and sort of like what you can gather from the way that books are arranged, all of that is incredibly useful. And then in the more sentimental category, again, I think that, like, you know, as we think about the difference between art and entertainment and distraction, one thing to remember is that you don't consume a book, you go into a book and it surprises you, and there are possibilities that you didn't know were there, and remembering that by sort of wandering around and allowing yourself to be surprised by what you see and by what other human beings have selected for you to look at. I think it just puts you in the right frame of mind to encounter a book.
Thank you. And Ruth, I've worked here a long time and sort of obsessed with publishing industry statistics, and still am not completely sure, indies play sort of a small percentage role in books, and yet they seem to have a really important place in the publishing ecosystem.
Yes, and I think everyone here understands intuitively why, and I think we're going to touch on a lot of that over the course of the conversation, but I think the thing I want to lead with is, most publishers, and there are other publishing colleagues in this room, most publishers kind of, I would say, overinvest in independent bookstores. If someone comes from the McKinsey and Companies, someone with, someone with an MBA comes and looks at the publishing business and looks at how much time and love we spend and all the authors who we send to independent bookstores, it doesn't really make sense on paper. But it actually turns out to be the engine that keeps everything going. Because if you want to launch a new voice, if you want to launch a Tommy Orange or an Emma Klein, or if you want to take a beloved writer to the next level, it could be Ocean Vuong or Colson Whitehead, or if you want to keep, there's a shrine to Alice Munro in the next room, who was a favorite of Carla's, and they had one great dinner together, but that's a conversation for another night. If you want to keep the best of your backlist alive, independent bookstores are your partners in that. They make a lot of noise. I don't know everyone here, but I'm betting a lot of the people here, you're asked for book recommendations, whether it's your family, your friends, your neighbors. So there's a word that is kind of thrown around a lot now, influencers, which, and I think of independent bookstores and independent booksellers and the people who shop here and come to these events are complete influencers. So you're our kind of helpers in finding, frankly, the best of our books. And the books, when I say best, I don't just mean quality, I mean those that will really resonate the most with readers, including children, right? All the studies that have been done about success for a child, those kids who have books, who spend time in bookstores, who spend time in libraries, they're going to have better lives. So that's another reason that independent bookstores are so important to us, is the role that a bookstore like this plays in literacy in the community. So we love indies.
Are there authors that you feel their careers have really, you mentioned Percival Everett the other day.
I know I'm not supposed to be, I leave it up to Michael, the alumnus, to do the pitching. I hope everyone reads James, which is a great book, and you have it stacked up somewhere, right?
Everyone should
Percival Everett's an amazing writer. A lot of us have been reading him for years. He was published for a long time by Grey Wolf, and his longtime publisher stepped back, and now he's with Doubleday, and he wrote a fantastic book called James that we knew, okay, this could be his moment. This could be the bestseller list. This could be a lot of people who have never read him. And, we started working on that book, I would say, a full year before it came out, going to media, going to all kinds of people, doing a lot of fun stuff on social media. But a key piece of our strategy was having booksellers kind of become our ambassadors. I don't want to say foot soldiers, that's the wrong expression, but partnering with independent booksellers to introduce Percival Everett to people who maybe hadn't read him in the past. And now he's been on the bestseller list many weeks, and I hope many, many more weeks. And of course the movie, yes, Michael, the movie American Fiction really, really did help. But also it was getting him in front of independent booksellers. And if you look at the sales track, and I'm not going to talk numbers because I know this is being taped, but if you look at the crucial first weeks of the book, the percentage of sales that were in independent bookstores all over the country was unbelievable. So you might be thinking, Susan, that independent bookstores are this percentage of the business, but if you look at the books that then go on to become cultural touchstones and go on to be Alice Munro backlist, it's a much, much bigger percentage. Abby agrees, right? It's a much bigger percentage, and that's not just for Penguin Random House, it's for Norton and Simon and really everyone else who's here.
And not to get too in the weeds, but what sort of percentage? I know it depends on how you count it, but I'm genuinely.
You're gonna have to bring that bottle of champagne. Brad told me this was going up on YouTube. So.
We can edit this
Brad
part
can
out.
answer that. Brad, do you want to answer that question?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it fluctuates so far as we've been able to extract for publishers. I mean, there was a time where bookstores accounted, their market share had shrunk to less than 10%. I think, at least we've been led to believe that in more recently it's crept back up over 10%. I mean, it varies by publisher and so on. I mean, we like to talk. I've also heard the term, the distinction made between market share and mind share, and mind share is just what Ruth was talking about, the influence factor. And there, we like to think of ourselves at 20, 30, 40, 50%, but anyway, it's, we often hear that we punch above our weight.
Well, my first question to you you've already answered, which was knowing everything you know, would you have still opened a bookstore? Have we sat in meetings with you where we've talked about things like bringing dogs to work? Unexpected things.
That was a major policy decision, and it occupied senior management meetings months and months. But I won't go into it now because it's too tortured a discussion.
Okay. Well, let me ask you one more question about the proliferation of the resurgence and proliferation of indies and the Barnes and Noble coming back. Is that all surprising to you?
No, I mean it's certainly reassuring to see more people jump into the bookstore business, and it might surprise people. I know it has surprised people when they've asked about, well, how do you feel about Barnes and Noble? They've had a turnaround of sorts too in recent years, and maybe some of you, have heard that they're having cleared out of Washington, D.C. a number of years ago. They are now coming back in and reopening the store they used to have in Georgetown. And, again, if you go back a few decades and there was, mortal combat between the independents and the bookstore chains. But the fact is we're down to really one major bookstore chain now in the country, and that's Barnes & Noble. And when they were really seemingly in some trouble some years back, we were very worried because if Barnes & Noble and their 650 or however many stores they have, if they went under, it would change the whole nature of our business and the showcasing of books in physical stores across the country. So there's been quite a change in the relationship, at least in the way a lot of independents regard Barnes and Noble. I mean, we want them to survive. I mean, they don't have to survive too well, but we want that. And really also what's very interesting is that a lot of the credit for the turnaround comes from a guy, James Don, who was brought over from Britain to be the CEO, and he has a background as an independent bookstore owner in Britain, and so he's applied a lot of what he's learned and knows about independent bookselling to Barnes and Noble, allowing a number of their stores to sort of behave more like in independent bookstores. So it's still a very hard business. Whether you're Barnes and Noble or an independent bookstore like Politics and Prose, the economics of this business really work against us in that we only get so much of a discount from publishers, and our costs keep going up, and we don't have control over our own prices in this business. If our costs go up, we can't. We could, but I mean, it's very difficult to raise the prices. We don't set the prices of our books; they're set by publishers. They're printed on the flaps of books. So we get squeezed in that way. So it's it's a bad battle all the time to survive.
Yeah. BMP's also been an incubator for other DC indies, which is a really lovely thing. We have Hannah, who Hannah and I started working on the same day, and she now owns Loyalty Books, and Lost City Books is also owned by a former BMP staff, Adam Waters. So it's been nice to see this proliferation, and it seems, we won't get into that, but it seems like there's room for everybody in the town, so that's been great to see. Well, this is not a specific bookstore question, but it does seem for many that it's been harder as an author to sort of sustain a career these days. Do you find that to be true? I don't mean, economically, I just mean the sort of publishing, the whole publishing world is challenging.
I think there was a quote one time by John Updike who said that there are probably about 20,000 serious book readers in the country. And he was in Massachusetts at the time, and I was working at the Boston Globe. My editor was a good friend of his. And so when you look at those numbers, and you're thinking of writing a book and selling some copies and trying to make a living, it is hard. And I have friends who tell me how hard it is. But book writing has always kind of been a specialized bit of mountain climbing. I mean, you really have to want to do it, and I've been fortunate enough to get a fellowship here and a fellowship there, and then I go teach someplace. I never get as much money as I think I should get. Ruth works in accounting at my publishing house. And so, no one has sympathy for us. We just go out there. Susan, you are a well-known, well-respected author, and how hard it is to finish, start a book. You got to come up with the idea, and then you got to stick with it, and then you hand it in, and you just hope that the stars come into place for you. I heard, the author John Grisham said every time somebody bans one of his books, they sell a lot. So I hope people ban my next book, ban the hell out of it, ban that sucker. After it's in the bookstores. First, let's get it in the Politics Politics and Prose, and then you can start getting radical with your thinking. But it is not easy life, but it's a righteous life. It's a soulful life, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I came to Washington, D.C., and I met wonderful people like Marita Golden, who was the founder of the Hurston Wright Foundation, and that foundation gave me my first National Literary Prize, and I'm so touched by that, and just the fact that that she's been a force in literature around the country, and a force with so many writers of color, been very significant. So, it's hard, but it's worth it.
Well, we can work on banning that book for you. I want to come back to that in a minute, but first, Katie, one more kind of reading question. I'm hearing so much about what kinds of books are selling well, like romanticy, and you're at least sort of working in a more verified part of publishing and critic life. But what sort, do you see any changes in our reading taste? Is there still room for literature?
Oh yeah, I mean it's interesting, and academics have written about sort of the incursion, or I guess a more neutral way, is the approach of genre fiction into the mainstream, and sort of how that's been incorporated. And you have authors who are doing really interesting literary things with horror, sci-fi, and have been for many years. And I do think that there is an increased willingness to engage with forms that used to be sort of cast aside or seen as less prestigious. I do think that there are a lot of micro trends these days. So we were actually just chatting about the divorce memoir, or the campus novel, but like a very particular type of millennial campus novel. And so there does tend to be, I think, just like a few. The categories are somewhat narrower, I think, than they used to be. And like one will just like catch fire, and then you'll get a bunch of imitators, and they'll come out, 6 months to a year, 2 years later, and the entire sort of inspiration for that movement has been extinguished, and you're sort of saying, why are there all these werewolves and but I mean, there's still so many different types of books being written, which sounds incredibly fatuous to say, but there's always more diversity and more multiplicity than there is like a single trend. And it's exciting to just like get so many emails and press releases every day about just wildly different genres and different forms of stories, and I think that's great.
Ruth, you mentioned when we were talking the other day about the role that indies play in freedom of speech and banned books issues. Is something that, when I came to work here, it didn't occur to me, although it should have, that this is going to be kind of political. I wonder if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I live in New York, and you live in D.C. and Maryland, so it's probably not a hotbed of censorship here as it is in a lot of other places in the country, but if you believe in freedom to read and free speech and freedom to publish, as I do, independent bookstores are real beacons of light. You go to some states where the local bookstore is the place where children, families, people can go to read books that are no longer allowed in the classroom, not because the teachers don't want to support them, but because the teachers perhaps are dealing with a school board, and same with the libraries. I think there are a lot of library systems where, depending on who your library board is, you don't have that much freedom to bring books in, or you don't have freedom to put them out front, right? It's not just about what you carry, it's about what you recommend, what's in the window, what's in the front table. And there are a ton of lawsuits happening now. Penguin Random House is part of them, and independent bookstores. I mean, there's a bookseller who Valerie Kaler in Houston, She's the owner and founder of a bookstore called Blue Willow, and she, along with book people in Austin, played a major role in a major lawsuit. There are only more of these lawsuits coming, and I'm not even going to name all the states. I saw a list recently of all the states where there are lawsuits now or lawsuits coming, and I just want to say, without independent bookstores, because no one really needs, right, a New Yorker to come to your state and tell you what you should be doing. You need local people. You need people who are paying taxes, people who grew up there, people who are part of the community. And that's what local bookstores do. So I don't want to get on my soapbox right now, but if you're someone who is interested in free speech, maybe whatever is your way of finding out what's happening in other parts of the country, and again, independent booksellers are often in the lead here. It's a real, I hate the word inflection point, there's a better word for it. It's a real moment now in this country, and I think for what we're doing, and Michael's part of this, I think it would be a lot more uphill for us to fight for free speech if we didn't have these local partnerships in these states where it's just really scary what's happening now. So it's not just September Banned Book Week, it's every week now.
Yeah, Brad, I mean, did you expect to be kind of plunged into the middle of that when you bought the store? It's not, I was gonna say it's, a tense moment, but it has been since the day you began, really. There have been so many different issues and occasional people showing up at events that are unexpected.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you own a bookstore that has politics in the name, you're gonna have to kind of, and you're in Washington, and you're prominent. But there has been a change, even in our time. I mean, we have built on this, foundation that was established so strongly by Barbara and Carla, and the mission of bringing people together and trying to provide a forum for discussion, peaceable discussion, as many independent bookstores seek to do, but maintaining that kind of decorum and calm and mutual respect has gotten harder and harder for us as it has, for so many other parts of our country, and we're determined to keep trying, but at the same time we've had to take steps to train our staff, explicitly in how to deal with all kinds of tense situations, including protests and demonstrations that might arise. I mean, we've had in recent years, groups of neo-Nazis walk in here to disrupt the events. We've also had others on the other side of the spectrum come in and try to dominate the microphone, to stop an event. So, it's the times in which we live, but at least bookstores, we hope, like Politics and Prose, can continue to provide some kind of oasis for reasoned, peaceful discussion.
Well, we're going to open it up to your questions, and we have microphones on either end. We have first question here.
Actually, I don't think I need the microphone. I just want to make a comment.
You need a microphone.
I do?
Yeah.
Carla was still alive, so it's at least 15, if not 20 years ago, that Politics and Prose won an ACLU award. Because I'm involved in the ACLU and I was present for the award ceremony. Just wanted everybody to know that.
Thank you. And tell us if you're directing the question to anyone in particular.
Well, to the authors. Once a publisher accepts a first draft, what happens to it? I mean, is it too long, too short? Are there going to be notes and index, copy editing? What's the process? And do you spend most of your time writing the book, or do you spend most of your time after you submit it?
Well, I think it really varies on the publisher and the editor, but with a good editor, which I've been privileged to have, there is a kind of robust editing process. For my last couple of books, I was given 9 single-spaced pages of notes for rewrite, which I was very happy to have because they were really smart notes. And yeah, then it goes through the whole process of copy editing and the whole, writing flat copy. There's just a lot of tedious pieces of it. And yeah, we'll let you add to that.
Yeah, every time I finish a book, I say to myself, I'm getting ready to put my editor out of business because there is not going to be anything for him to do because the book is just so written so well, elegantly and smoothly, and I almost feel sorry because I walk right up here on Connecticut to the UPS and I say, damn, my editor is just going to feel terrible when he's in this book because he's not going to have much to do. And then I sit like in a fetal position, waiting on him to edit and send the book back. And he edits with the red pen. And when I open the box, the manuscript is like somebody has spilled blood. It's all kind of red stuff on the, first page, the second page, and then I'm angry and I go for a walk and I just say, this is why I won't endure as an author, because this kind of stuff. Sending me my damn book back with all this red stuff on it. And then I'll calm down and reread it, and then I say, oh, okay, he's right. All right, okay, this makes sense. Okay, did I mention that in the 3rd chapter? In the 5th chapter? Okay. So, it's all I'm saying is that, we need editors. I mean, I don't care, how many books or awards or whatever, I happen to have a very, very wonderful editor, Peter Gethers, who's edited my past 6 books, and we are really tight. Yet, he knows how I write. And I think that just comes with years. He knows. He knows my rhythm, my style, my rhythm. He knows it.
That's a much more entertaining answer, Will.
Nice t-shirt. You want to explain where you got that?
Explain the t-shirt in a minute. I'll go back before that. I met Carla before she mentioned anything about a bookstore. And when she said to a couple of us she wanted to open a bookstore, Lissa, I looked at her and I said, "You're crazy." I mean, I have no experience in bookstores or anything, but there's no foot traffic up here in Connecticut Avenue. I mean, this was a different city, 40 years ago. And of course there were the big chains. I've never really understood how the bookstore began and prospered, but all of a sudden, I mean, there it was. She saw something, she and Barbara saw something and made something that, as a complete outsider, I don't understand at all. But the T-shirt is when
Yeah, it says, "Why did the bookstore cross the road?" For those who can't see it, so we're back to the other side. So what's the history of that?
when she opened the store across the street, and when they bought this place, asked for and got a lot of volunteers to move books from that store to here.
You got a t-shirt out of it.
I got a T-shirt out of it, and I wear it maybe once every 10 years.
Did you
just a comment briefly. I mean, you're absolutely right that, if you're looking at a map of DC, this would be one of the last places that you would think to open a bookstore. I mean, like 10, 15 minutes to the closest metro stop. This is a short commercial block on Connecticut Avenue, and the other commercial blocks, areas on Connecticut are, extend longer. And yet, obviously, TV has worked here. It's become a destination. And I don't know how do you explain that? It's magic.
I'm not in the industry. I'm just a customer, member, super fan of the store. I did want to ask a question of Brad, though, and just as background, I don't know if everyone in the audience is aware that the bookstore, that Politics and Prose, year-round, does fundraising events for local schools and other organizations, especially a lot of the local public schools and DC public schools. And I've been involved with one of the local schools, Dayton Elementary, down in Cleveland Park, with their annual book fair that they do with the bookstore since about 2018. And just since, in the 6 years, so we had to skip a year due to the pandemic, in the 6 years that I've been involved, the store donates 20% of all of the books that are sold under the book fair during the weekend that we host the fair. And so families, friends, community members purchase books in the children's section off of teacher wish lists, and those books make their way into the school. So just in the 6 years that I helped coordinate Eaton's book fair, with the help of all the wonderful booksellers and managers, the Donnas and Heidis and Aggies downstairs in the children's section, the store has gotten hundreds of books into our local schools. And just in the one store, in the one school, we've received over $12,000 from the store as a donation, which goes right to the PTO organization of the school and helps support everything from supplies to supplemental teacher salaries to field trips. And so what I was curious about is that 20% is a rather large margin on the books. I've always wondered, that must be most, if not all, of your profit margin, given that the prices are set. So I've always been so impressed that you're able to support the community and literacy in this way in the immediate neighborhood of the store and across the city with all of the organizations that you work with. How do you do it? How do you manage to kind of squeeze that out of the profits of the store? Because there are many, many grateful customers who then become return customers who become members because of your support of those organizations.
Well, that's very kind of you to mention that, but this is why we are essentially nonprofit. 20% is a big chunk of our, what our normal markup would be, but we really believe in the mission. I mean, if we can't get books to kids, then, that's where it all begins, right? And so we're very proud of our children's department. We're very proud of all the partnerships that they've built up with all the schools around. We'd like to do even more, and we just see it not as, a cost, we just see it as a crucial, critical investment.
One more.
I withdraw that. Not the last question, but please. No. Plenty of time.
I wish I had a face with that power. That was So this is a meta question for Katie. I know you can get meta for reading your reviews. So since you were talking about the future of books, I wanted to ask you, what is the future of book reviewing? Or what is the moment up till now, the moment that we're in, of book reviewing?
That's a great question. I would so much rather just tell a cathartic story about my assassin editor and how terrible it is to be edited. The future of book reviewing, there are so many good critics out there, but it's the distribution problem, right? It's like, how do you get an audience for for writers, and as we all know, sort of local newspapers are shutting their book sections. It's been really difficult for the smaller online magazines to stay afloat unless they have like a very rich friend or benefactor who can swoop in and buy them. And so we're in this weird position, I think, and a lot of people have different ideas, but I think that the quality of books criticism is extremely high. You're getting a lot of different types of people, like from different backgrounds, a lot of different perspectives kind of swirling around in the discourse, and a lot of that is due to sort of the digital nature of the discourse there. But at the same time, it's really hard for a talented book critic to break out and to sort of get the kind of exposure that they would need to make enough money to do it as a career. And so I think that it's not a rosy picture, but it is workable enough that like people should still do it. I guess that's not the most inspirational answer, but I think publications, I know that Condé Nast and the New Yorker are not alone in really trying to solve the crack the riddle and figure out how to get people's work in front of readers.
Yeah, that's interesting. We could do a whole panel on that and talk about Goodreads and online reviews. It's very interesting.
Okay, the two of you need to identify yourselves. And make clear your biases.
I've been threatening to ask a really hard-hitting question, but I'm not going to do that. Full disclosure, my name is Abby Fennell. I used to work here. I worked in the events department. And so my softball question... Yeah, oh, wow! How many of these shirts have you carried, Brad? Anyway. Right, yeah. My softball question for this panel, because the events are very near and dear to my heart here. Do any of the panelists have a favorite event moment in the store that they would like to share? I can think of many, but I'm sure.
What is yours?
Well, I think mine has to be David Sedaris, staying here until 2:30 a.m. with Brad, who stayed, and many of the staff, and David Sedaris. But I feel like some of you on the panel probably have very good event memories that you could share from your own or from others.
Wait, Abby, you have to say what you do now.
Oh, sure.
We
Now,
for the publishing.
yes, now I am one of the many Politics and Prose employees who works in the publishing industry. So I am a sales rep for W.W. Norton, and I sell books to the independent bookstores in the Southeast, including Politics and Prose. You don't answer my question.
I don't know if anyone was here when Mrs. Obama was in the basement, right? And we were only allowed to have
We actually was over here.
over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we were only allowed to have 250 people, and I had never seen her. Of course, I was a huge fan and had worked on her book, but I had never seen her up close before. And everyone came, and everyone was madly in love with her. And what was so fascinating was whenever an 8 or 9-year-old boy would come online, I don't know if you remember this, Anna, she would light up, and I just want to say, my husband's here tonight, that's the best flirting lesson I ever got, was watching Mrs. Obama here with 8 or 9-year-old boys.
So sweet.
Brad, do you have a favorite?
Well, I mean, not to speak for us, but I think we really enjoyed and mentioned again and again, James McBride, when he came out with Good Lord Bird, he brought his band to the store and did a sort of multimedia presentation, when you talk about the book, the band would play, and talk about the book, and that had this place just rocking. That was a real moment to remember.
And we heard about Wil's,
He's a world-class musician.
Yeah, he's a world-class musician.
Yeah, I just have to say, that probably is my favorite event.
Or certainly one of them. I mean, also Bill Clinton. I just remember when he was back here for his workbook that nobody cared about, but they loved him. And we had to, cordon him off, and people were sort of weak-kneed as they left. And I just remember this one woman we'd sort of escort them out, and she said, "That's it. I'm going home right now and divorcing my husband. But on the James McBride thing, what made me think of that was that a woman walked out and she went, "That wasn't a book talk. That was a spiritual experience." And it kind of was. As was Percival Everett just a few weeks ago. So those are among the really great events.
But nothing probably tops Wil's would-be prom date show.
That's got to be up there. We're going to do the top 10. Will, you're on the top 10.
Hannah.
Okay, Hannah,
I just wanted to
identify.
ask, did she mention the prom when you saw her?
Yeah, we have followed.
Yes. What happened?
Microphone.
Yeah, she asked me what happened. I really didn't need her phone number anymore. So life, I moved on. That's just the honesty.
Okay, Hannah, same thing. You gotta identify yourself.
Hi everyone. Hannah Oliver Depp. I own local books here in town and in Maryland, and I was a bookseller at Pulitzer for about 5 years. I also grew up coming here. I was a teacher. I taught multiple classes here. I wrote my master's in the downstairs of Politics and Prose, and then walked upstairs and said, "I've got a master's in literature. I think I need a job." And thus began a long story career. But you made the fatal mistake, Susan, of not saying questions, not speeches. So I shall now launch my 45-point speech. But I do want to say, I think there's a lot of people in this room who work in publishing, or who own bookstores, or who work at other bookstores, who got their start at PNP. And there's people, literally, if you go to a bookselling conference, it's a little bit like belonging to the mafia, your family, you can't leave. But the reach and the expanse for the last 40 years and the influence on the industry that this store has had is immense. And PNP has started more career booksellers. I would put our numbers. I think it's a pretty strong crew, and it's a responsibility I know that Lissa and Brad have taken very seriously, to not only mentor and encourage and continue relationships with people even after they leave the store. And I just want to say thank you. Because it's huge. Workplace, they're still going to look out for you and ask how you're doing. And it's helped us become the kind of community makers all across the city and all across bookselling. So it's a lesson in mentorship that we'll carry with us, and it's still your responsibility as the biggest fish in the pond to keep doing it. So good luck with that. But
Loyalty books there.
yeah.
Lovely way to close out the panel. We just a few things to say. Please don't leave. We have refreshments in the fiction room, and we want to thank our neighbors, Fred from Rosemary's Bistro across the street, and James Alfontes, who's provided some food from Muchas Gracias. So thank you to such great restaurant neighbors. We also have a lot of 40th anniversary items for sale, so you're going to want to look for those. And we have a guest book at the front of the store, so please sign that. And also, because we are a community, we're not asking you to carry any books, but if you don't mind folding up your chair, but hang on 1 minute. Oh, okay. These are for Brad and Lissa from everyone at Politics and Prose. I'm not even sure who all the unsung heroes are today, but I know Glory has Glory. All right, yeah, fold up your chairs.
Fold up your chairs.